Mia Holloway stood on the threshold of her new home, her breath visible in the crisp autumn air. The Victorian mansion before her loomed large, its dark silhouette stark against the setting sun. Ivy crawled up its stone facade, and the garden, overgrown and tangled, seemed to whisper secrets of a bygone era. The house, with its intricate woodwork and grand architecture, was a relic of a forgotten time, a time now reawakened by her presence. As she pushed open the creaking iron gate, a shiver ran down her spine, though she dismissed it as the chill of the evening. Mia, a historian with a passion for uncovering the past, had inherited this property from a distant relative whose name was barely a whisper in her family's history. Eager to start her new life and to unravel the mysteries of the mansion, she stepped inside, unaware that her new beginning would become a descent into a living nightmare. The foyer was expansive, dominated by a grand staircase that wound its way up to shadowy corridors. The walls were adorned with faded, once grand wallpaper that whispered of opulence long gone. Mia's footsteps echoed eerily as she explored, her flashlight casting dancing shadows that seemed to move with a will of their own. That night, as she settled into the master bedroom, Mia's sleep was disturbed by dreams so vivid they felt real. Shadowy figures moved through the hallways, their whispered voices filling the silence. They murmured in a language she could not understand, their presence cold and oppressive. Mia woke with a start, her heart pounding, her mind struggling to distinguish dream from reality. In the days that followed, Mia's nightmares intensified. The shadows from her dreams began to infiltrate her waking life. Scratches appeared on the bedroom walls, long, jagged lines as if something had clawed at the wood in a desperate attempt to escape. Strange symbols, crude and ancient, were etched into the floorboards, glowing faintly in the dim light. Determined to uncover the source of these disturbances, Mia delved into the history of the house. She discovered that it had once belonged to a man named Victor Thorne, a reclusive occultist known for his dark rituals. The townspeople spoke of him in hushed tones, their stories painting him as a madman whose experiments with the supernatural had gone awry. One evening, while poring over old newspapers and diaries, Mia stumbled upon a chilling account of Thorne's final days. According to the records, he had been found dead in the house under mysterious circumstances, his body contorted in a grotesque pose, surrounded by occult symbols. The cause of death was never explained, and the case remained unsolved. As Mia read the accounts, the whispers in the house grew louder, more insistent. The shadowy figures from her nightmares became more defined, their movements synchronized with the whispers that seemed to seep from the walls. She could hear them clearly now, their voices a cacophony of anguish and rage. Desperate for answers, Mia sought out the town's oldest resident, Mrs. Beatrice Whitmore, who had lived through the time of Victor Thorne. Mrs. Whitmore, with her frail frame and sharp eyes, was reluctant to speak at first, but eventually relented. She revealed that Victor Thorne had been involved in a ritual to summon a powerful entity, a dark force that had been bound to the house. Thorne's death had not ended the entity's influence. Instead, it had strengthened it. The entity, known as the Whispering One, had been feeding off the fear and despair of those who lived in the house, growing stronger with each new occupant. It thrived on the terror it instilled, manipulating the shadows and whispers to drive its victims to madness. As the days turned into weeks, the haunting became unbearable. Mia's waking life was plagued by the same horrors that haunted her dreams. The shadows grew bolder, their whispers now clear and menacing. They seemed to follow her every move, their presence a constant, suffocating weight. In a final, desperate attempt to rid herself of the malevolent force, Mia decided to confront the Whispering One. She gathered the symbols and writings she had uncovered, using them to perform a ritual she hoped would break the entity's hold over the house. As she began the incantation, the house seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy. The shadows swirled around her, their whispers rising to a deafening crescendo. The confrontation was a harrowing battle of wills. Mia's resolve was tested as the shadows clawed at her, their whispers filling her mind with despair. But she persevered, her voice rising above the cacophony as she completed the ritual. The shadows seemed to recoil, their oppressive presence waning. As dawn broke, the house was eerily silent. The shadows and whispers had vanished, leaving behind an unsettling calm. Mia, exhausted but relieved, knew that the Whispering One's hold had been broken, though the scars of the haunting would remain with her forever. In the aftermath, Mia documented her experiences, turning her ordeal into a compelling account of the house's dark history. Though she moved on with her life, the memories of the shadows and whispers haunted her, a reminder of the darkness that had once lurked in the corners of her new home. The Victorian mansion stood silent once more, its secrets buried beneath the surface, waiting for the next soul brave or foolish enough to uncover them. Daniel Finch adjusted the rearview mirror, casting one last look at the bustling cityscape before turning onto the narrow country road. Beside him, Laura's excitement was palpable, her eyes sparkling as she glanced at the quaint cottage that would soon be their new home. The little house, nestled amid the green fields and shaded by towering oak trees, seemed to promise a serene, idyllic life. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, an unsettling feeling began to creep into their excitement. The cottage, with its ivy-clad walls and vintage charm, was a perfect haven for the newlyweds. Its wooden beams and antique furnishings spoke of a bygone era, offering both beauty and history. Daniel, practical and logical, was enchanted by the cottage's character, but approached it with a sense of measured skepticism. Laura, on the other hand, was captivated by its potential for creating a cozy home and immersing herself in its rich history. Their first night in the cottage was marked by an odd sense of disquiet. The silence, though profound and peaceful, felt oppressive. As they settled into their new surroundings, Laura's dreams were disturbed by an unsettling vision. An old woman with a sorrowful expression searching frantically through the cottage, her movements frantic and desperate. Laura awoke with a start, her heart racing, but dismissed the dream as the stress of the move. The following morning, the couple discovered that their belongings seemed to have been moved during the night. Items that had been neatly packed away were now scattered, and strange cryptic notes had appeared on their kitchen table, written in a script Laura did not recognize. The notes were filled with incomprehensible symbols and phrases, sending chills down Laura's spine. As days passed, the disturbances grew more intense. Daniel began to notice that objects in the house were being moved or displaced. He initially attributed these occurrences to the disarray of moving in, but as the incidents persisted, his skepticism began to waver. The atmosphere in the cottage became increasingly unsettling, and both Daniel and Laura found themselves plagued by recurring nightmares of the old woman. Determined to uncover the source of their fears, Laura began researching the history of the cottage. She visited the local library and historical society, digging through old records and newspaper archives. It was during this research that she first encountered the tragic tale of Eleanor Gray, a once respected woman of the village who had lived in the cottage during the 1920s. According to the records, Eleanor had been a beloved figure known for her kindness and generosity. However, she had been betrayed by someone close to her, resulting in a tragic and untimely death. The betrayal involved the theft of a precious heirloom, an object of great personal significance to Eleanor. The theft had led to a series of tragic events, leaving Eleanor's spirit restless and vengeful. As Laura delved deeper into the story, the disturbances in the cottage escalated. The old woman's spirit, Eleanor, became more visible in Laura's dreams, her presence more defined and her search more frantic. The cryptic notes became more frequent, and the symbols they contained began to resemble the designs Laura found in the historical records. One evening, Laura and Daniel encountered an elderly resident of the village, Mrs. Beatrice Whitmore, who had known Eleanor in her youth. Mrs. Whitmore was initially reluctant to speak, but eventually shared what she knew. She revealed that Eleanor had been deeply distressed by the theft of her heirloom, which had never been recovered. The betrayal had left Eleanor's spirit trapped in the cottage, bound by her unresolved quest to find what was lost. Armed with this knowledge, Daniel and Laura decided to confront the spirit directly. They set up a séance, hoping to communicate with Eleanor and provide her with the closure she sought. The séance was fraught with tension as the atmosphere in the room grew colder and the shadows seemed to deepen. Eleanor's spirit appeared, her form ethereal and glowing faintly. Her eyes, filled with sorrow, locked onto Laura's with a pleading intensity. Through a series of whispered, fragmented messages, Eleanor revealed the location of the missing heirloom hidden within the cottage. The object was a locket containing a portrait of Eleanor and her lost love, stolen by a man she had trusted. With renewed determination, Daniel and Laura searched the cottage's hidden corners, finally uncovering the locket buried behind a loose floorboard in the attic. The locket was tarnished but intact, and as Laura held it up, the oppressive atmosphere in the cottage seemed to lift. The shadows receded, and the temperature returned to normal. That night, as they lay in bed, Daniel and Laura felt a profound sense of peace. The haunting presence of Eleanor's spirit had been laid to rest, and the cottage, once a place of fear and unease, now felt like a true home. The echoes of the past had been silenced, and the couple could finally begin their new life together in the serene, welcoming space they had envisioned. In the aftermath, Laura documented their experiences, turning their ordeal into a compelling account of the cottage's dark history and their journey to bring peace to a troubled spirit. The quaint cottage, with its rich past and newfound tranquility, became a testament to the enduring power of love, forgiveness, and the importance of confronting the shadows of the past. Oliver Kane's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the ornate mirror in his living room. It was an exquisite piece from a bygone era, its intricately carved frame hinting at a history steeped in elegance and mystery. The mirror had been a spontaneous purchase at a local estate sale, its age and craftsmanship captivating Oliver's architectural sensibilities. As he admired the mirror's reflection, he could not have anticipated the darkness that would soon seep into his life. The first night after placing the mirror in his home, Oliver slept fitfully. His dreams were plagued by unsettling visions of his own home, but this version of his house was shrouded in darkness, its rooms filled with ominous figures lurking just out of sight. Each time he awoke, the sense of dread lingered, and he found himself glancing nervously at the mirror, which seemed to hold a faint, unsettling glimmer. Over the following days, the mirror's influence grew more disturbing. Cracks began to form on its surface, marring its once pristine reflection. Oliver noticed that the mirror no longer showed an accurate depiction of his home. Instead, it reflected a parallel version, where shadows moved of their own accord and indistinct figures flitted through the rooms. The mirror's fractured reflections seemed to taunt him, suggesting a reality where something malevolent prowled just beyond the edge of his vision. Oliver's initial skepticism began to wane as the disturbances intensified. He found objects in his home inexplicably displaced, their locations shifting as if manipulated by an unseen force. The mirror's reflections grew increasingly erratic, showing glimpses of people and events that were not part of his reality. Desperate for answers, Oliver began researching the mirror's origins, uncovering a history fraught with ominous undertones. His investigation led him to a local historian, Mrs. Agnes Hawthorne, who revealed that the mirror had once belonged to a notorious medium named Malachi. Malachi had been cursed after a failed séance, and his spirit had been trapped within the mirror's reflective surface. The mirror had since passed through various hands, each owner experiencing strange and terrifying phenomena before discarding it. As Oliver delved deeper into Malachi's past, he discovered that the entity's curse was bound to the mirror's reflective properties. The dark spirit had been attempting to escape its imprisonment by using the mirror to manipulate and torment those who came into contact with it. The fractured reflections were a manifestation of Malachi's growing power, feeding off the fear and confusion of his victims. The situation reached a crisis point when the mirror's reflections began to invade Oliver's reality. He found himself facing the ominous figures that had once been confined to the mirror's surface, their presence becoming more tangible and threatening. The dark entity's grip tightened, and Oliver's home seemed to warp and shift in response to the mirror's influence. Determined to rid himself of the malevolent force, Oliver sought the help of a paranormal expert, Dr. Lydia Monroe. Dr. Monroe performed a ritual to communicate with Malachi's spirit, hoping to understand its motives and find a way to banish it. The séance revealed that Malachi's obsession with breaking free from the mirror had driven him to increasingly desperate measures, using the fractured reflections to lure and trap new victims. The final confrontation took place in the dimly lit living room, where Oliver faced the mirror's dark entity head-on. The room was filled with the eerie reflections of twisted figures and shadowy forms, their movements synchronized with the growing darkness. As Oliver confronted Malachi, he felt the full weight of the entity's malevolence pressing down on him. In a desperate bid to break the mirror's curse, Oliver and Dr. Monroe performed a counter-ritual, drawing upon their combined strength to confront and banish the dark entity. The mirror's surface shattered with a resounding crash, releasing a burst of dark energy that swept through the room. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the malevolent figures vanished, leaving the room eerily silent. In the aftermath, Oliver's home slowly returned to normal. The mirror's shattered remnants were carefully disposed of, and the unsettling reflections that had haunted his dreams faded away. The experience had left Oliver deeply shaken, but he was resolute in his determination to reclaim his sense of peace and normalcy. The cottage, once a place of fear and terror, became a symbol of Oliver's resilience and triumph over the darkness that had sought to consume him. The experience served as a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in delving too deeply into the unknown and the consequences of confronting forces beyond comprehension. As Oliver moved forward, he carried with him a newfound respect for the boundaries between the known and the unknown, forever changed by the fractured reflections that had tested his courage and resolve. Thank you for joining us on this spine-tingling adventure through the darkest corners of horror. We hope these chilling tales of whispers in the night, echoes from the past, and fractured reflections have left you with a lingering sense of unease. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more terrifying content. Share your thoughts on these eerie tales and let us know which one haunted you the most. Until next time, keep the lights on and your heart steady. Stay tuned for more tales that will keep you awake at night. Sleep tight if you can.